Hello everybody, video here for you today. This Saturday, January 22nd, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm pleased to announce I'll be doing a live stream event. The Curse of Oak Island season so far, including a brief history of the discovery of the money pit and the major finds over the 225 plus year history of the treasure search. Hoping to get other nerds in the chat, Oak Island nerds, history nerds, with questions and theories, and that would be probably a pretty fun time. Check it out. It will also be available after the fact to watch. Beyond Oak Island is a show in which the History Channel and Rick and Marty Lagina get involved with other treasure mysteries. If you missed any of the recaps of The Curse of Oak Island or Beyond Oak Island, there's a link to the playlist in the upper right. There's a no-cap recap of Season 1, Episode 3 of Beyond Oak Island called Finders Keepers. Let's get into it. In the Oak Island War Room, Maddie Blake asks Rick and Marty Lagina who gets the items they find on the island. The brothers explain that if it's an artifact, something the government deems historical in nature, the government has first dibs, but they don't have to take it if they choose not to. If it's jewels or a metal in a non-natural state, the Laginas are entitled to 90% of its value. Maddie Blake's hypothetical slippery slope example is a gold Knights Templar cross that is both metal in non-natural state and historic. So what happens there, right? Extra note for me, the government in question here is the Canadian government, as Oak Island is part of Nova Scotia. After finding the Maravedí coin in the Oak Island swamp in 2013 during the first season of The Curse of Oak Island, the team took the coin to Florida to be cleaned and examined. The company they took it to was founded by Bobby Pritchett, who began diving in his 20s and decided that's what he wanted to do for a living. They got their first contract in 2010 in the Dominican Republic and were immediately successful, finding multiple shipwrecks and many artifacts. On his second contract, this time on the east coast of the Dominican Republic, Bobby again found multiple wrecks, including the Pewter wreck, a likely Spanish ship that yielded the largest cache of 15th century pewter tableware ever found, worth millions of dollars. They were able to clean and conserve most of it, and some pieces are in the palace of the Queen of England. After meeting Pritchett, Marty and Lagina and his partner Craig Tester decided to invest in Bobby's company. Pritchett had met with a fellow treasure hunter that shared research pointing to several shipwrecks likely being off Cape Canaveral, Florida. The reefs were so far off the shore that the passing ships headed back to Europe with plundered goods from South America thought they were in deeper water than they were, and they would wreck. They got permits to locate and survey the wrecks, and Lagina and Tester advanced Pritchett a, quote, quite a large sum of money, unquote, for equipment and other expenses. After searching for the next several years, Bobby's team found 5 shipwrecks, and archaeologists confirmed them. The archaeologists also gave estimates of value based on the size of the anchors, which relate to the size of the ship and how much tonnage it carried. The smallest shipwreck was estimated at $300 million, and the high one was worth $1.2 billion. Back in the war room, Maddie Blake mentions that Rick isn't wearing any gold, so ask what happened. Marty responds that it's not only bad, it's worse than one could have imagined. One of the wrecks contained a large marble obelisk with a French coat of arms engraved on it, and a cannon engraved with a French fleur-de-lis, as shown. Marty said in his mind the Spanish had colonized Florida, but that's not true. The French founded St. Augustine as the first European settlement in Florida. Bobby still thought these ships were all Spanish and that the French items were items won in battle. But when he turned in the final dig and identify report, the Florida government decided that his team had found La Trinité, a lost French ship that was at the epicenter of battle between the French and Spanish. Bobby's company countered that their research and physical evidence showed that the ship was from the Spanish Navy instead. Bobby Pritchett maintained that there has never been any proof that any of the ships off the Cape were French, much less what they say is the Trinité. This 1565 map shown here that is in the Library of Congress shows Ribal wrecked 95 miles north of the ship that Pritchett found. Ribal was the captain of the Trinité. He also says that even if the ship is the Trinité, his company should be compensated for finding it. Some of this information is from my own research and not in the episode. Included among that was that Bobby said Florida shared the GPS coordinates with France immediately, and that should have been protected intellectual property of Bobby's company. After 2 years, the Federal District Court concluded that the remains were indeed those of La Trinité and ruled in favor of France. The Sunken Craft Act of 2004, United States law, dictates that the originating country has sovereignty over any ship that was on a military mission and its contents. Further, the state of Florida determined that all of the wrecks were French. He goes on to say that France does not want the items back in France, and that Florida can display the items in a museum, and by making the deal with France, they get everything for free instead of having to pay Pritchett 80%, minus what it costs the government to recover the items from the ocean floor, of course. Marty concludes that the monetary gain was certainly the main reason they invested, but there are French items on what they believe to be a Spanish ship, and that instead of getting to unravel that story, it's still buried out there. This is an episode from December of 2020, and still no work has been done at the site to this day. I found a July 2021 article that says the French are asking an appeals court to uphold the ruling, so apparently someone appealed it. That article was mostly hidden behind a lawyer website paywall, so I could not read the entire thing and could not find any other articles mentioning appeal of the ruling, so I don't know. I assume Bobby Pritchett did that, but I do not know. Back in the war room, Marty says that governments are always going to win because they have the resources to fight anything. Rick tells Maddie that all governments are not the same, and that in England, for example, you are by law required to report any artifact you find. Then the government decides to either split it 50-50, or they will place a monetary value on it and give the finder 50% of that. And then the find goes to a museum to be shared with the world community. Everybody wins, he says. Next, they talk about greed and cover a case in England in which 2 men that discovered Viking rings and coins from the 9th century worth millions of dollars decided that 50% wasn't enough. They did not report the entire find to authorities and tried to sell some of it to private collectors. They were eventually caught, and as of the episode, only 31 items had been recovered. I found no newer information. Via video conference, metal detection expert Gary Drayton reveals a connection to that case. A coin dealer approached Gary in a hub for a selfie, and in conversation told him that 2 guys had tried to sell him some Viking coins they had found. He thought it was suspicious and declined. That coin dealer later read about it in the paper. The men declared most of the hoard, but they tried to sell a bit of it without declaring it. They were in line to receive north of $3 million, but instead went to prison for trying to get a few $100,000 extra illegally. Marty says that 90% of items in museums were found by treasure hunters, not archaeologists. The story of the San Jose shipwreck is then shared after Rick says it's an example of what happens when governments, quote, become unprincipled, unquote. Off the coast of Cartagena, Colombia, 2,000 feet underwater, lies the holy grail of shipwrecks, the San Jose. That ship was carrying an estimated $20 billion worth of cargo, and as far as anyone knows, it's all still down there. The San Jose was in Panama, receiving gold looted from the west coast of South America. It was in port for a long time as it continued to receive spoils. It and other ships set sail for Cartagena together. The British government found out about the fleet and engaged in battle. The San Jose exploded and sank. In 2015, maritime archaeology consultants contracted with the Colombian government and the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, that's the group that found the Titanic wreck in 1985, to find the San Jose. After the first expedition failed to find it, the second expedition was successful. Spain wants it because it was a Spanish galleon. Colombia says it's theirs because it's in their waters. America has a claim because an American company was contracted to find it and did so. Of course, the treasure originally belonged to the Inca Empire. The legal battle continues as the warm, salty waters eat away at the treasure. Next, they discuss World War II treasure as the Nazis and other countries did a lot of looting. On September 19, 1931, 10 years before the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese Imperial Army invaded China and began a campaign to strip that neighboring nation of billions of dollars worth of diamonds and precious metals as part of a strategic program known as Golden Lily. They would smelt the gold into 165-pound bars for easier transport. As the Allies were closing in near the end of the war, the Japanese decided to hide the treasure in the Philippines. The commanding officer was General Tomoyuki Yamashita. In 1946, he was tried for war crimes and executed. With him went the knowledge of the location of the treasure. In 1971, Roger Rojas discovered a tunnel and boxes of treasure. Dictator Ferdinand Marcos had his men imprison and torture Rojas and confiscated the golden Buddha he had found, and more than a dozen gold bars were confiscated as well from the Rojas house. Rojas would repeatedly be released from prison, then brought back in and tortured in an attempt to learn the location of the treasure, which eventually worked. After Marcos lost power in 1986, Rojas filed a lawsuit against the former dictator. The court awarded Rojas $22 billion, but Rojas had died just prior to that decision. His heirs ended up getting nothing, as a Hawaii court overturned the award because the judgment was based on Rojas's own estimation of the value. The location Rojas found is unknown, but several other locations with part of that treasure have been found, and people are still searching the Philippines for part of that treasure. To conclude the episode, Marty says that the Canadian government is tough but cooperative as far as Oak Island is concerned. That's my alarm. Sorry about that. Rick reiterates that it's not just a treasure hunt, it's a history hunt as well, and he thinks that if the parties involved in all of these cases concentrated on the history too, that everyone would be better for it. Not part of the episode, but my own addition is that the episode was recorded a year or so before the 2021 archaeology finding of Mi'kmaq pottery on the island led to the government requesting a shutdown of work in those areas until they can assess the situation. As a result, Rick and Marty decided to halt any archaeological digging so that more of the island doesn't get shut down. Archaeologist Laird Niven remains on the island as a consultant, but the other archaeologists were no longer on Oak Island as of episode 10 of this 9th season of The Curse of Oak Island. I'll continue no-cap recapping the first season of Beyond Oak Island, while also recapping each episode of Season 2 of Beyond Oak Island and Season 9 of The Curse of Oak Island as new shows are aired. A link to Beyond Oak Island Season 1, Episode 4, The Lost Dutchman Curse, will be in the upper right once I upload that no-cap recap. A final reminder of the Curse of Oak Island season recap so far live stream Saturday, January 22nd, in which I will also give a brief history of the discovery of the Money Pit and the major finds over the 225 plus year history search for the treasure and history.